Welcome and welcome back. Last time out we took a dive into the informative but terrifying world explaining the sneaky tactics around game development and pay to win in the Tricks Exposed. But there is another, that following our last outing I lost count of the amount of times I saw mentioned and requested in the comments. A game that incredibly was released in 2011, 4 years prior to the Tricks Exposed. A game that is not only a side-splitting jab at scummy video game practices, but today is more on the nose than ever. My name's MitchManix, and this is DLC Quest. DLC Quest opens revealing its 2 chapters, the base game covering when DLC goes too far, and Live Freemium or Die, which cranks things up to 11 to say the least. Beginning the game, we are shown a short cutscene of the classic antagonist stealing away the princess, / going off the rails when it comes to hat choices, acting as the game points out as our motivation, when we get a pop-up that really puts DLC Quest's cards on the table when it comes to its satire of DLC, with missing features including animation, sound, and moving to the left, absent right now but of course readily available in the game's shop. And with that we take our first steps into the game's world, or well, our first slide as it happens. And with these features removed, it does also give the game a rather creepy feeling, especially when encountering the shopkeeper, who has a fittingly haunted 1,000-yard stare slapped on him at all times. Talking to the man, he reminds us of the captured princess and our mission to deal with the bad guy, who apparently has also killed our uncle, as well as peed in the town's water supply. What a bastard. Getting a first look at the shop and initial DLC available, we swiftly collect up some capital to at least unlock the basics, while also coming across some extra DLC for horse armor. A cheeky nod to the whole debacle over the Elder Scrolls Oblivion from back in the day, of course. Picking up the game's sounds and animation packs, we explore further and encounter the land's blacksmith and his grindstone. Anyone who saw our first time out will be able to piece together what is about to happen here, with finally being able to equip this new deadly weapon, when... Oh God. The blacksmith, of course, after providing our first weapon, informs us that for it to work we will need to use the grindstone to sharpen it, no less than 10,000 times. A feat that I did contemplate sitting through just to spite the thing, but again after our previous experience, opted to return to the shopkeeper to grab the Time is Money pack and trivialize the whole experience. Finally, weapon in hand, we get a chance to try it out on a nearby sheep/dog, before speaking to a nearby shepherd, who employs us to leave his sheep alone if we were to encounter any, an NPC that is in for a little surprise upon turning around. But since he seems to be rather stationary, I think we may have gotten away with it. Exploring further, we get stopped by a stubborn chap blocking off the path to the east, and end up having to bribe him with the Psychological Warfare pack, containing a bunch of pre-order goodies, that even he didn't even know why he wanted it, but just had to have it. Kind of like subscribing to the MitchManix channel, which is free. Did this man just put a channel plug in the middle of the Psychological Warfare section? Yes he did. The Psychological Warfare pack being a note that has only got more ridiculous in the years following this game's release, with the insanity of pre-order versions and collector's editions. As an example, if you can remember Watch Dogs needing an entire spreadsheet to remind people what was available, but something overall that I get the feeling that most people are starting to push back on, although that may be wishful thinking. One for the comments. Marching on, collecting yet more funds, delving into the caves where we find a particular NPC, who apparently has no idea how he got there, and by looking at him I'm not exactly surprised. Whilst gathering up more funds for the map pack DLC to unlock the forest to the east, we find another NPC that has all manner of requests for our hero, finding a fishing rod, recovering an enchanted book, and even rescuing some of the local kids in danger, to which our hero essentially tells him to bugger off and do it himself, something that I wish was an option in more games, honestly.
Fuck them kids. Fuck the kids?
Grabbing some more coins and unlocking further DLC for the store, we move to unlocking the forest, only to encounter a strange suited and booted man standing at its entrance that when spoken to ominously explains that he has an important role to play, but we don't know what quite yet. A chin scratcher indeed. It's in the forest that we come across a sign telling us that we are coming up on the hideout of the bad guy, so make a trip back to the shop NPC, as we'll need all the help we can get. But alas, it's not enough, as the entrance is guarded by a troll who laughs at the attacks from our meager weapon. But we are in luck, as we have just unlocked the gun pack from the shifty suited man we met just before, that, quote, is a purely cosmetic weapon that in no way unbalances the game. Honest. And a pack that I may or may not have gotten a little carried away running around and demolishing everything in sight, from the remaining sheep to the entire stage's inhabitants, which would have been a considerable problem if we weren't luckily off to the second chapter, with a whole new host of surprises, and a range of new NPCs to encounter. Chapter 2 begins with Roy here explaining that something has been attacking the villagers at night, and beckons us to follow him, just before falling balls first on some spikes and dying a noble death to teach us the game's spiky mechanic. Venturing forth, we come across a number of villagers' gravestones, that on them tells tales of their deaths by the hands of the creatures. An interesting development, making me wonder if I missed the part where our hero slyly grabbed himself the bribe the authorities pack. Striding on, it's not long before this happens. What would a game taking the piss out of downloadable content be without the Day 1 patch DLC? That without, we will suffer constant loading screens as the game attempts to keep itself together. This being a jab that again all these years later is depressingly even more on the nose, remembering games such as Mass Effect Andromeda, and even really recently with Payday 3. Getting a look around the village of Chapter 2, we get to meet the town comedian telling cringe-inducing jokes. Enter MitchManix's entire channel joke here, as well as the village elder, who our hero is glad to see, as quote, is looking for the one in charge, but alas is left disappointed by the revelation that this is indeed the town elder, as well as being the eldest in town, and as it happens is also incredibly senile and doesn't even know what day it is. Moving on, we meet the middle-aged man of the village, who if you ask me is disturbingly excited to see us, who before telling us more about the creatures that plague the village, needs us to retrieve an incredibly important package that can be found in the cave to the east. On our way there, we pick up the previously mentioned Day 1 patch DLC, which reads, "Improve loading times with some optimizations we didn't think were important enough to delay the game's launch. Good thing you have an internet connection." Grabbing this to rid the game of more loading screens, and making a trip to track down the incredibly important pack, we return to the overly excited middle-aged man, to find out that the incredibly important pack was in fact the colored text used in dialogue, as according to him was mandatory for explaining any further details. We are then given a sword to cut down the vines blocking the cave under the village, and we get to work tracking down this mysterious evil, meeting a few new faces and unlocking more DLCs. It's not long until we are reunited with a familiar face, the shepherd, that according to the townsfolk was killed in the attacks on the village. The shepherd reveals that it is in fact him that is the cause of all the attacks on the village. What a bastard. And that he has done so in revenge for us murdering all of his sheep. Turns out this bloke was a little bit more mobile than we first thought, as he summons a gang of zombie sheep to take us out. A plan that works perfectly, but not before us grabbing the useless plant DLC, that with its cost will take a little bit more coin collection and exploration to obtain, leading to getting a look at interesting zones such as the dark zone that is described as dark because our art director says silhouettes are artistic and trendy, most likely a cheeky jab at the popular game Limbo released a year prior to this one, as well as upon venturing further making our way to an area simply described as Alan please add zone name, followed by Alan please add world, which while funny now makes me wonder if we will at some point get to see any of Alan's work at all. After many coins being tracked down, we return back to grab the Harmless Plants DLC and unleash them on the zombie sheep, with the game not missing a beat with the shepherd's disbelief of the idea of plants defeating zombies. Cutting down the shepherd, we wander on and triumphantly walk out while the credits roll, when the 1,000-yard stare shopkeeper reappears, warning us that there are far greater threats than zombies. DLC quest hits us with the old server connection issues, complete with being stuck in a queue to rejoin to top it all off. And if it wasn't depressing enough, as a reminder this game was created 12 years ago. Finally getting back into the world, we are given access to the cut content pack, as well as noticing that the world is now filled with billboards displaying adverts, with that not being the only change, as it seems we have also been banned, with the reason stating, "Let's see you buy your way out of this one," which after a bit of coin collection is swiftly handled by the name change pack, getting a chance to change our name to the most Chad of obnoxious gamer varieties. Now with access to the further lands once again, we find a note from the shop vendor telling us that he will not be selling us any more DLCs. But luckily for us, or unluckily enough, we of course now have the cash shop to obtain DLCs in his place. DLCs featuring gems such as the Season Pass to allow us to travel to the Winter Zone, the cut content pack that implements the world that Alan had unfortunately not quite had time to finish, as well as more novelty options, such as the Canadian Dialogue pack, that as far as I can tell hilariously just adds the words A after every NPC sentence, and the High Definition Next Gen pack, which makes the entire color palette brown, giving me flashbacks of my time spent with Greedfall. Greedfall. Do you like brown? Reaching the final showdown, the shopkeeper strips us of our DLCs and coins, before warning us of the dangers of microtransactions. and claiming that he is the true OG of freemium, by way of a Batman reference, which is particularly funny after installing the Canadian pack. With the final battle in full swing, the shopkeeper of course takes time out to sell us more items, this time around the very sword that we will use to deal damage to him, as according to him, if there's profit to be had, monetize it. And with that we use a ridiculously massive one-time use sword to deliver the final blow, which as it happens also unfortunately destroys the entire world, bringing this story to a conclusion. A scary satirical adventure through the world of DLC and microtransactions, that has if anything become more impactful today than when it was released over a decade ago. An eventuality that I feel some of the NPCs have foreseen, with their 1,000-yard stare peering into the horrors of a cash shop-infested future. On one side I have to agree that things have got more than out of hand, but I'm gonna need a Canadian dialogue pack in Baldur's Gate 3 immediately. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this down in the comments. Please consider dropping a like on the video if you enjoyed it. And if you thought this or Pirates of the Caribbean Online was weird, then boy do I have one hell of an MMO video coming up for you next. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one. We're getting so close to 100,000, baby. I want to give a massive shout out to the channel supporters that help in keeping the content coming. Good lord, they're beautiful. If you're looking for where the real party is at when it comes to DLC, including behind the scenes and fully exclusive videos, then the link to the channel Patreon is down in the description. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Shit. Jesus, calm down. Oh dear lord, what have I done? Standing upon his steed like a Segne, the former being mostly due to his reputation of being slightly less than accurate with his spells for unknown reasons.